Questions orales. Oral questions. L'honorable.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. For 9 years, the Liberal Bloc has put a tax on your food, causing your groceries to be more expensive, doubled the cost of housing, and doubled the national debt. With the full support of the Bloc, the Bloc has voted over 200 times to keep this party and this government in power. And now they want to increase your taxes even more. Isn't it time for you to have the chance to choose a new common-sense government that will cut taxes, build housing, fix the budget, and stop crime? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, if the opposition leader had spent any time speaking to Canadians this summer, he would realize that Canadians want solutions. They want solutions to the challenges they face as families with fighting climate change. They want to know how Canada is going to position itself for the economy of the future. But the opposition leader is only interested in his own interests, not Canadians' interests. Meanwhile, we on the other side of the House here will continue to work to deliver the goods to Canadians to build a stronger economy for all. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. Mr. Speaker, what Quebecers see is the biggest expansion of the federal government in Canadian history, a centralizing government and a costly one at that. And all this with the full support of the Bloc, which has voted some 200 times for inflationary spending, centralizing spending, and bureaucracy, which totals $500 billion. Mr. Speaker, Quebecers have the right to have a common-sense government that will cut taxes, build housing, fix the budget, and stop crime now. The Right Honourable Prime Minister. What we're doing, Mr. Speaker, when we announced in Quebec a significant investment in Telesat to create good jobs in Quebec, which will have an impact on productivity and national security in Canada and all around the world, the Conservative response was to call their friend Elon Musk to say, no, you can't send those jobs here to Canada. Instead, you should be giving your money to American billionaires. We find that completely far-fetched. We are here to invest in Quebecers for the future. This is our first day back, but I'd like everyone to remain polite. The Honourable Member for Charlebourg-Haut-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, the Bloc voted for the largest expansion of the federal government ever, more spending than ever, more public servants than ever, more scandals than ever, with Quebecers' money. How did the Prime Minister convince the Bloc to support the most expensive and centralizing government in Canadian history? The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, our government is proudly progressive. Our government is proud of our action on the climate. We're proud of our support for child care, and our government is very proud of our support for families. And Mr. Speaker, we know that those progressive values are the same values that Quebecers hold dear. And that is why we are supporting Quebec. We're supporting them when it comes to the climate, to childcare, and we're proud to be doing it here too. The Honourable Member for Charlebourg-Haut-Saint-Charles. The Bloc claims to defend Quebecers' interests. Is it in Quebecers' interest to support the most expensive government in Canadian history? Is it in Quebecers' interest to raise their taxes, to strengthen the federal government, which is constantly encroaching on Quebec's jurisdiction? It's clear the Bloc is only defending the Prime Minister's interests. What did the Prime Minister offer the Bloc leader to get him to agree to support this centralizing government? The Honourable Minister of Fisheries and Oceans. Mr. Speaker, look at the Conservatives. They have no shame in claiming that they want to march towards prosperity when all they can do is take the path of austerity. Canadians know that all the Conservatives can do is chop, 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 Mr. Speaker. They cut investments for ports, for small craft. They made cuts to science, to families, to child care services. They cut for dental care. And that is the path the Conservatives will take, the path to austerity. The honourable member for Beauce. Mr. Speaker, one coalition appears to have ended, but another remains, the Bloc Liberal coalition, responsible for $500 billion in inflationary centralizing spending. Under this coalition, the public service grew by more than 100,000 public servants. That's the most expensive government in Canadian history. But wait times and service standards have never been worse. My constituents and staff in Beauce have to wait hours to get answers. What did the Prime Minister promise the Bloc leader to keep him in power? The most expensive and centralizing government in Canadian history. The Honourable Minister of Canadian Heritage. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This summer I had the opportunity to speak to many of my colleagues in the Liberal caucus who met in my riding, and we talked about the cuts the Conservatives made when they were in power. So I took them to the experimental farm because they don't believe in science, so they made cuts to agricultural research. I took them to show a cultural centre that we built because all they did was make cuts to culture. Quebecers remember that when the Conservatives were in office, all they could do is make cuts. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Chicoutimi-Lafjord. Well, Mr. Speaker, I'm curious. I'm wondering, can the minister even point to Sacré-Cœur on a map? Inflation, cost of living, interest rates, life is hard enough as it is. Now the Liberals, they just have to add another layer of stress. The Bloc Québécois supports them, and the only way to get rid of this tired old government is to replace it with a Conservative government. The Bloc voted with the Liberals 188 times to keep the Liberals in power. Will the Bloc Liberal coalition leave forestry workers alone once and for all? The Honourable Environment and Climate Change Minister. Mr. Speaker, if only you knew how many times this summer I met with Quebecers. They find this ridiculous. It's ridiculous to talk about a Bloc Liberal coalition. Now, we work well with the Bloc Québécois, but there is no coalition. Quebecers find that really far out. The Conservatives do not care at all about protecting the environment. That's apparent. They don't care about water quality, the quality of our environment, about the future we're leaving our children. We, though, are here for people, for communities, and for the environment,